mean, I just got more into my health and my fitness, which made me feel better, of course. And then I just started doing things. I started going out to dinner with my friends, attending different events, living a life instead of just working and coming home. Mm-hmm. And then it actually felt better to be alone and than to have an undercurrent of an unhealthy relationship.
We've been talking a lot about divorce and all of this process from exiting the relationship through, there's so much on the front end, it feels like. And we spend a lot of time talking about that, and certainly through forgiveness, and that's its own multiple
ongoing process.
Yeah, multiple conversations.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, so, but so then it's like, now what? You're past the difficult parts of the legal proceedings, and now you're spending time alone, maybe, or recouping, licking your wounds. At least I was.
Yeah, funny enough, I didn't, going through all that hard time and all the stress of that, I actually felt like a flower blooming, I guess you could say, and didn't even realize that I needed out of that relationship until once I was alone and really started to feel like I was finally living a life other than just going to work, coming home. Really, out of the dark came a lot of light for me.
Yeah, it's weird when you all of a sudden you start. I don't think it's like right away or intentional or like this event, but it's like now you start thinking about yourself as individual.
Yeah.
And for you and me, who are both in marriages, 20 plus years of marriages, and really, I think we're both 25 years, pretty close to 25 years with each of our respective spouses, if you count the entire length of the relationship. Mm-hmm. It's a long time. It's a quarter century. So you don't think, at least I didn't, in terms of just me.
Yeah, I totally let myself get sucked into the relationship and that life of there was no individuality within myself. Early on in my past relationship, I mean, like we said, looking back, hindsight's 20/20, but I kind of allowed that relationship to alienate me from my friend group. He always got kind of, I don't like her, or made it difficult for me to kind of keep those relationships, and so it was easier for me to just focus on family and let those go.
So you guys met early on. So
Right.
You're talking about your childhood friends and the ones that you were growing up with?
Oh, yeah. Well, because we met in high school. So, my high school group of friends. And I was also in a different point in my life because I had a child so much earlier than them. So, I mean, I was a step ahead as far as that point in my life. And so in combination with that, and then just the difficulty, like the angst that it made me feel, and he controlled our money, or managed our money. I'm trying not to be like,
yeah, no.
But he managed and paid all the bills, and I honestly never knew what was, what our budget was and where we were. And so he would always be, I would want to do something, and he would be like, we don't have the money for that. And so gradually I just quit trying. So it became a life of going to work, coming home, taking care of my kids, which is wonderful. And I love that part, but I didn't keep that individuality. I didn't keep a friend group, something for me.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, our lives, it contrasts so much. And last time we were talking about forgiveness or when I was talking about the things that I had experienced in my life, and you were feeling like, I don't know if I can really relate to that.
Right.
And so here we are on the other side, and I don't know if that was the same story for me, because that wasn't a dynamic, I guess, in our
I wish I would have been
so.
more assertive and said, I'm doing this for me, and and keeping these friendships alive. And But like I said, when you're kind of in it, and it just slowly became easier to remove myself from that life and just be focused on him and my home life.
Yeah. Do you feel like that was, do you think it's just kind of the nature of your personality? Because like for me, if I would have been the,
Right.
we'd have been going toe to toe.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, he kept his activities going.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I didn't see it, but yeah, I think it's just my personality. I'm a little more of a people pleaser and go the path of least resistance kind of person. So this whole shakeup really made me step back and look at myself. What do I want? What do I want in life? What do I want in a relationship? Because I had never done that before.
So your friends in high school, so you lost touch with them, partially because you said his behavior, but also because you were in a different stage of life because you had a newborn.
Right.
And I get that. I mean, that does change. It does change the dynamic of our relationships with people and friends. I guess did you have throughout the course of your marriage? I mean, did you not have any friends, or was it
work friends when I was
Yeah.
at work?
Yeah.
But like I said, the whole money situation, things were tight, and it was like to go out and do things costs money. So,
Right.
he would say, we don't have the money for this or that, or I would get this undercurrent of attitude, if I was going to do something that didn't involve him. And so it was just easier.
Make you feel guilty about it?
Well, just kind of an undertone of, I don't even know the word to describe it. I guess guilty, but he just didn't like it. And I don't know if it was insecurity, jealousy, or what. I mean, he has his own story, but it was just easier to keep the peace and not rock the boat and just let that part of my life go.
That's interesting. So fast forward. Now you're by no choice of your own. You're on your own. Where does that come back? Like, at what point did you turn around and say, you know what, I've neglected this part of my life, and I'm going to do something about it?
Well, that was part of my healing process, I think. Once I was on my own and I started doing things, I started showing up to the different events that I would be invited to, or just started saying yes instead of no. And then once I was on my own, I actually was able to spend money that I earned, was there for me to be able to do things and have a life outside of just working in the home.
So those friends that you had grown up with, did you immediately reconnect with them, or did you feel like so much time had gone by that it felt awkward, or were you kind of inside your own head? The only reason I'm asking these questions is because I'm thinking about maybe the way I would have approached it had I been in your shoes.
Well, I did. I was kind of worried that too much time had gone by, too much life had happened, and that there wouldn't be that connection. But with the encouragement of you, which you helped me.
Leading the witness here.
Leading the way. You helped lead the way. No, I mean, I'd already started a little bit of it before I met you, but you really encouraged me to try to rekindle those friendships, and we have, and it was like we picked up right up where we left off. So it's been wonderful to have that part of my life back.
Yeah, no, I mean, truthfully says, I see it. I see it in your interaction. You've got a great group of friends, and I love how it's just it's just really kind of blossomed in you. It's fun to watch.
You're making me cry.
I'm not trying to make you cry. Yeah.
No, it's been really good.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Yeah. So in my case, I had a lot of friends. I mean, a big friend group from all different, whether they were childhood friends or people from work or whatever walks of life. I was never in a situation where I had to choose, or I had somebody that was trying to draw me away. I moved a long ways away from where I grew up, so there was this geographical separation. And, this is certainly before cell phones or internet, it made it a little more, I guess you had to be more intentional about keeping in touch. Whenever I would travel home, and I would try to get with people. So I had always, my friendships, the ones I had, were always important to me. And that, I'm thankful that I have a lot of friends that I grew up with.
I've never met somebody with so many friends.
Well, I mean, friends that, that I started out, I didn't go to kindergarten.
But you're so good at fostering those relationships, and that's why you've been able to keep them all these years. You made it a priority.
Thank you. I don't necessarily know I feel that way, but a really good friend of mine told me something a long time ago that really stuck with me. And he said, it was simple. He said, if you're going to have a friend, you got to be a friend. And I mean, that's so true, right? It's just like a relationship. If you're gonna have a good companion, you've got to invest.
Yep, got to put in the work.
You do, yeah. So, so it's this whole sense of redefining your identity, I guess, and and what does that look like, and is it thought out? I think in my case, I was still dealing with a lot of like emotional trauma of pulling the trigger, even though it was my decision, worrying about the kids and this and that it wasn't like, okay, now I'm at a point where I can focus on me. It wasn't like that at all. But at some point when you're leaving a house that only you live in, and you're going to work, and you're coming home, and it's just you, then all of a sudden it dawns on you like, oh, that's just me now.
Yeah.
I mean, you still have the interaction with the kids. I mean, not interaction, but you still have life with the kids.
Well, I think that was one of my failures, and why I didn't feel fulfilled in that relationship is I had lost some individuality in that relationship, and I think it's important to maintain that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I felt the same way. I felt like, and it's not easy to just dissect in a conversation, because it was like, it's just so complex. But I too felt like I really lost a sense of self. And in our case, entering into a relationship so young as what we did, it's like, how much time did we really have to know who we were, our identity?
Right.
And again, I'm not knocking anybody who started out a relationship young. You grow together, and that's great. But I just felt like I kind of lost myself along the way, and I know that it was a contributing factor to the detriment of my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it takes two to tango, so to speak, right? But so the important thing was, all right, how do we get back on our feet? And like you said, reconnecting with friends, maybe that reestablishing a social network. If you had your family. If you had a family that was involved, great. I was thinking about before we came in here today was another thing was like, so now you have this whole other component of shared friends.
Oh, yeah.
Shared friends.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
that got ugly.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like it always says, who your friends are when something like this happens, and then it's almost like they get together when you're not there. It's like, all right. It's like it was like dodgeball in high school. I got to pick teams. Right. Whose team are you going to be on?
Well, my ex was so fearful that I guess he was fearful that he would lose his friends, that he was kind of giving some falsehoods to try to make him look a little better, and me, not as good of light. But I just kind of sat back, and the truth comes out. People see people for who they are, and me, I'm kind of like worry about it for a little while and then let it go.
Yep.
And
that all that dirty laundry seems to get aired, right? And again, not to coin cliche, phrases that are cliche, but there's three sides to every story, right? There's his side, her side, and then there's the truth. And I was subject to the same thing, land-based. But like we talked about when going through the divorce, and how much do you want to fight,
right?
Or how much do you want to? In our case, how much do you want to expose the kids to?
Well, and if you spend so much time focusing on the fight or trying to prove who's right or wrong or did this or that, you don't have time to focus on yourself. And that's really, for me, what helped my healing, was to focus on myself.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great advice, is just to kind of stay focused on yourself. I'm not sure that, I always did it because there was this sense of like, I wanted to be understood. And if there was something said that was incorrect or not the truth, I was like, I'm going to call bullshit on it, because I wanted to, because there was a lot of it. But it was like, then you just find yourself, I think you just find yourself in this, unintentionally, in this defensive position, right? Because everyone's going to have an opinion, right?
Right.
But it wasn't until maybe months later, maybe years later, I don't remember, but somebody had said to me, when we were having this conversation about the very thing we're talking about, I was like, people really don't care that much about you, in the sense of like what you did. It's like, yeah, it's hot news for today, but like, they've got their own lives. But when we're going through it, we're focusing on, I think, man, everybody's just got this like magnifying glass on me, and they're scrutinizing me, and they're saying, you did this or did that, and it's not necessary. That's a perspective.
Right.
Not necessarily true.
Yeah, you really have to kind of let that go, because like you said, they're not spending as much time thinking about you as you are worried about what people are thinking about what's going on in your life.
Yeah, so what do you think is the best way, if you were talking to somebody and they're dealing with this whole shared friends thing, and maybe I don't know, the trade rags, where there's there's a lot of shit being slung.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying about just focus on yourself, but what advice would you give when you're dealing with like the friendships? Because maybe there's friendships that you want to maintain, but maybe they choose something else for whatever reason, and we've both experienced that.
What can you do? You got to let go. You got to let that go.
That's
and
tough,
just
though.
keep moving with the current. It is
and
tough.
especially tough when you're right in the middle of like a loss anyway.
Right.
It's just everything feels like one big loss.
Yeah. Because loss of friendships is really hard too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think you're right. There's those that know who you are, and some just step back to give you space, and then you have to appreciate that. But you're right. In hindsight's 20/20. Now we can look back and say, oh, those friendships that I was worried about, or the ones that have gone the distance, and realized we're all human, we all have our faults. We all just trying to do the best we can, make the best decisions, and we ultimately want to be happy. And if they're okay with that, and they realize that, then they're the ones that are still there.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Interestingly, you and I were just back visiting an area where I had spent a lot of my years with friends that were group friends or family, marriage friends, and I hadn't seen some of them and really talked with them in a long time. So to go back and have those conversations and realize, you know what, everything's okay, and they don't hate me. They don't think I'm a jerk. Maybe they do, but I mean, they shouldn't say it. But
I don't think so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Time just has a way of doing that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Time gives you perspective, and there's a lot of emotions in the beginning. So I think after things settle down, it definitely gets a little easier.
Right. So what'd you do with your time? Like, were there things that you didn't do before? Like, I'm thinking like activities, things that excited you.
Yeah, I mean, I just got more into my health and my fitness, which made me feel better, of course. And then I just started doing things. I started going out to dinner with my friends, attending different events, living a life instead of just working and coming home. Mm-hmm. And then it actually felt better to be alone and than to have an undercurrent of an unhealthy relationship every day, experiencing that every day. So started reading. I can't think of everything right now off the top of my head, but I was just grateful. I was finally grateful for things that I didn't really notice before, and I was just a lot happier.
Yeah.
So what type of self-discovery did you have after you experienced being alone after all those years?
Mine was maybe not so initially so outwardly active, although I've always been really active outdoors. So that's always been my sense of, well, even when I was a kid and all that trauma and dysfunction going on in my house, my escape was the outdoors. Not because I found it that way. I think it was just always in me, who I was. And my family, my mom's side of the family, uncles and cousins, they were big outdoorsmen, and so they kind of invited me into that. It had always been an interest to me ever since I was a kid. I always watched these nature shows like Wild Kingdom on TV. But so that was my solace. I would find that, and I would get quiet and get out, and it was just, everybody has that thing. Yeah. For me, it's just remote wilderness. The more wild, the better. Yeah. So that was good, but I found a lot of. I started writing again. Like I've always. Yeah. It's funny because like in high school, I wasn't the most studious. I think I had the ability. I just didn't have the. Your
focus was in other areas.
Yeah, maybe. But I didn't have the interest, But I always liked I was just always creative, I guess, and so my creativity comes out in talking.
So I didn't know. Well, I know about the talking, but I didn't know about the writing. I didn't know you started that after the divorce or through the divorce. I thought you had always done that. No.
No, I mean journaling. I had always journaled. Well, I say always, but certainly for even a long period of my marriage, I was journaling. But what I mean was I started to write in a creative manner. Like
that's right. I know what you're
actually
ready
wrote
to
a
say.
book.
Oh, all right.
I say a portion of a book.
I thought you were going to talk about writing down your perfect woman, how you put that down on paper.
Well, that's a whole manifesting thing. Yeah,
I think she looks like this.
Love it. It is. Yeah, I'll have to tell that story. So I think the writing shifted from kind of like just trying to get my feelings out, because so much of it was just trying to figure out why I was just not feeling alive fully.
I did that too.
Mm-hmm. To now I was just, I don't know, maybe it's just the way I'm wired. I started to write. I had a chance to, like I said, to write an excerpt but a book. Not that the book really made any money or anything like that for sure, but it was actually a business book, and I wrote the leadership part of it, like a chapter. Maybe it's a chapter, but a number of pages on leadership, and but leadership from a connection standpoint, and so that was fun. Yeah. And then it was just hanging out
with your cooler coffee table. That's it.
I spent a lot of time with my kids.
Yeah.
I worked a lot, and at the time, certainly, I was quite busy with work. I traveled a lot, and that continued a long time. So I found that and fortunately, I had a lot of the people I had a chance to do business with, I became friends with. So it seemed like, so I had the outside and then the social component. Right? Yeah. And so I found myself engulfed in those two, just being social and.
So it all comes back to relationships, doesn't it? And connections.
It does. Yeah. Certainly for me it does, but I think everybody, and some people are more introverted. You.
I still like my connections.
No, I know that. And people more extroverted, like me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're social, right? We're social creatures. I mean, we really weren't. I say we weren't. I don't think we're designed or created to live on an island. Although I think a lot of people are like, "Hey, put me on an island."
We were just talking about being alone and how good that is to sit and be quiet
for a season.
Right.
For a season.
Right.
Yeah.
A nice balance. You need a nice balance of that. Well, and that's what I was saying. Like even in my relationship, I wish I would have kept that sense of self and kept that balance of who I was. I mean, when I came out of the relationship, I remember somebody asking me, "What's your favorite restaurant?" And I was like, "I don't know the answer to that." I mean, who doesn't know their favorite restaurant? I had never done anything like turning around. Like, what do I like? What do I want to do? It's just wild.
What's your favorite restaurant?
Don't put me on the spot, Sargent. Maybe it's because I like too much variety. Yeah. But it was just one of those questions like, what do I like? Yeah. How do I want to live my life? What do I want to spend my time doing? Outside of my family, my kids, and it was just a big eye opener.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just made me think of something. And again, to all the pet owners out there, I don't mean any disrespect at all. I grew up with animals, but my entire relationship, we had a dog or two dogs or a rabbit and a dog or a rabbit and two dogs or whatever. But like never from the beginning of my relationship out was I the one that wanted to initiate having a pet.
Well, you don't always get what you want, Sargent.
I know, but it was a sense of like, there's a lot of times like I didn't want a pet.
You just went with the flow. That's kind of how it was.
And I have nothing against animals. It's just, I'm just not that person who wants to take on that responsibility. I'd raised kids and just wasn't. I like to go and do. And
so you're going to mention what you told me when you first met me?
What was that?
What you weren't raising anymore? The 3 things?
What did I say? You'll have to remind me. What was it?
You said, I'm not raising any more kids, not raising any more pets. I don't even want to raise my voice. And I said, right. You will be the perfect match for me then. Right. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's fine. I remember now, yeah. But my point was like, I didn't, she wanted pets. I didn't want pets, so we compromised and we got pets. It was like I didn't have a choice in the matter.
Now there is compromise.
No, but I mean, for me, I guess my point is that now being on my own, I was like, oh, no, I have a choice.
Right.
And I could say I didn't choose to want to raise any more animals.
Yeah.
And it felt a little weird, but I like to be able to go lock that door and go on a trip, go travel, go whatever, and not and it was just not have to worry about having any additional responsibility home that would drag me or pull me back home when I didn't need to be, I guess.
That's why it's important to keep your voice in a relationship, and and then compromise. I mean, I don't know where I was going with that, but
I think that's something you a lot of people lose along the way is that voice. When we talk about communication, how it's important, and a lot of times communication just becomes sharing information, talking at each other. And some people I know, I have friends that are in relationships that do a really good job at maintaining their sense of identity, individuality, right? Because in my mind, whether it's a legal marriage or just a long-term relationship, I think it's supposed to be 2 individuals that come together to share life and to complement each other,
right? Not
to lose themselves. And I think, we were young. I mean, nobody gave us a field manual on it.
And sometimes it just happens. You don't even realize.
Right.
I guess I was so oblivious to everything. Sounds like I'm so oblivious to everything in my relationship, but it's just kind of what it morphed into.
Correct. So for me, going back and having that time and writing out through conversational writing, for me, it was like, what do I like? What do I want? What voice do I have? What do I feel like I need to stand up for? One of those things that came out of that was boundaries.
Yeah.
Right. Boundaries with certainly her, in the sense of just what conversation we're going to continue to have as we went through the rough patch. Boundaries with family, like my dad, who was in total disagreement with what I was doing. And so having her voice, finding her voice, setting boundaries, I think those 2 are like 2 strong pillars if you can determine what boundaries are good for you, and then be assertive, don't you can do that without being a jerk.
Right.
I mean, those two things alone, there's just a lot of power in that.
I agree.
Yeah.
So after that time alone, I knew that I did not want to repeat the past. That I wanted to keep these changes that were happening within me, as far as who I am, what I want, and to have a voice, and to really pick the person that complimented me and allowed me to have that.
That's good. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You have to temper that with a couple rebound relationships. So
Lord.
And then it gets really complex. You're like, I am not going to do this again, or I'm going to be in a place where I'm happy.
I didn't have
then,
a rebound relationship, so
yeah.
I'm sure everyone will be excited to hear about your multiple rebound relationships.
Hey. I didn't call it multiple. They were all growth opportunities.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm sure some of my past dates, it'd be funny to hear now the review on it. Just as I was navigating that, I was probably a little clingy, just looking for that attention and that connection that I didn't have for so long.
And familiarity.
Yeah.
Right.
More
You
for
spend so much time together with somebody. There's all of a sudden that disconnect, and you and I are very. Is physical the right word? But physical touch. That.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've actually lined up all your dates that we're going to bring them in, and we're going to interview them. Yeah, we're going to have this really good conversation.
I was very broken during that time. I was still healing.
I think everybody really enjoyed these conversations.
Take it easy on me.
No.
But it wasn't bad. It was all good. It was all part of the healing and learning experience, and learning how to date. I had never really dated.
Yeah. So I think that's the time where you really, hopefully, in a healthy way, you think, I don't, like you said, I don't want to, there's a lot of things I'm not going to repeat, or I'm going to try my hardest to not repeat. Yeah. And then it's just getting comfortable with that change. So we'll get into that as it leads into, becoming comfortable being alone. And I mean, that's huge. I think so many people just bypass that. I think I did a couple times, and I had to come back to, like, what does it mean to be okay with just being me, with not having I don't know how you define it, but a serious relationship.
Right.
I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is to get comfortable and be happy just being alone.
Yeah.
But we'll venture into that maybe the next time we talk. So it's been good.
Yeah.
So all right.
You say it first this time.
I love you.
I love you too.